Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mitch Michals from our Santa Monica studios, and we are in the thick of Indian Wells 2023. Special guest on this week's show. He's been on the podcast a bunch. You can find him on the Lucky Let Court podcast. He writes for Tennis Now. Even seen a couple of his columns on the BNP Paribas Open website, All Tournament. He's on site in the thick of it from dusk till dawn. It's the fan child, Chris Oddo. Chris, thank you so much for joining the show. Excited to have you back. And again, no shortage of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, Mitch, good to be back. Good time to chat. As a lot of stuff happened at Indian Wells. Weekend just started. Lots of big matches coming up.
So how has it been for you being there, feet on the ground? I know it's not your first rodeo, but this event in particular, it's got so much recognition, and deservedly so, for being, the fifth major, for winning all the awards for facilities and tennis experience. And I can vouch for that. Going there, just the setup and everything they do well, they do it big and proper. But how has it been, with your feet on the ground, covering it and just seeing the entire spectacle of Indian Wells? I think people had forgotten with the unfortunate events of the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a good scene over there. It's definitely grown over the years, and it gets quite crowded on the first weekend when everybody's in play. Any tennis player that you wish to come see is likely going to be in action on that first weekend, so it gets a little crowded, but not overcrowded. It's a great buzz. There's like 8 or 9 stadiums, from large to small to medium. It's pretty much something for everybody. There's the practice court experience. There's been great weather. It hasn't been as warm as usual, but it's still pretty much perfect. You can't ask for much more. And in terms of the way that the tournament takes care of us, the media in the press room, awesome layout. I think you've been in that press room. So you just step out into Stadium 1. You got a little balcony anytime you want. And then it's not too hard to get around the grounds and see everything else either. So it still has a little bit of a small town feel. But it's such a world-class event. There's so much going on, and the quality of tennis just high.
Yeah, this past Monday, Tuesday, there was a couple night sessions where it was 3 courts all the way through that were just loaded with some of the best players in the world. And you can't beat that at any event, let alone, such a cool experience. A lot of ways we can start with this. I want to talk about the number 2, could be number 1 player in the world at the end of this tournament, Carlos Alcaraz. He comes back from his injury and unfortunate circumstances there, missing the Aussie Open, getting banged up against Cam Norrie in Rio. But he's back like he never left, looking spectacular as always into the quarterfinals, and picked up his 100th win in the second fastest time. Only John McEnroe by 1 match got there first. But for Alcaraz, Chris, I look at him and marvel at his movement, his easy power that he generates, but also the fact that he can just step on and off different courts, different surfaces, and adjust his game no problem. It doesn't seem like there's much of a calibration that's needed for a player like him.
Yeah, good point. I mean, this is a guy who's gifted in all areas of the game. He's built himself just a great base of tennis. He can do all the things on a tennis court. He's not by any means a one-trick pony. He can do it all. And as we've seen in these last 3 matches, I think it's been 3, yeah, not dropping a set, a little bit of a short one against Draper, who wasn't fit. But when he's healthy, he's like as good as we saw at the Australian Open. There hasn't really been a letdown in his level of play. We saw that as he stepped out of the court, his first tournament of the year, winning in Buenos Aires. And then the hamstring started to bother him in Rio, which I think has a little bit to do with his loss to Cam Norrie. By the way, no shame, listen to Cam Norrie. The guy's an absolute beast. But yeah, it's exciting having Carlitos at this tournament. There's definitely a different energy when he plays. The fans are really starting to connect with them. He's starting to connect with the fans. One thing that was tricky, I will tell you, Mitch, is that I was here on the Sunday before anything even started, and we're kind of like, where is Carlitos? We knew he was struggling with health issue, and it took a while for him to show up and hit the practice courts, but it looks like he's perfect health. You never can tell with a player, right? But everything he says checks out, and also everything he does, his body language, the amount of joy that he has in himself and that he's sharing with the people shows that I think he's 100% healthy. So I think we're going to see a great match today with FAA.
Yeah, to be young, right? I mean, it's great to have that easy recovery that he has as a teenager. And I agreed with what he said too. When he's rolling, it's that forehand down the line. That's the shot that, I mean, he's great regardless, but when that's going, it's tough. And I was at the Kakanakis match, and I just thought, watching him with the things I mentioned, the power and the movement, that you have to, and maybe this is where Felix and some of the other elite players have their chance to beat him, is you have to do it tactically, because if you're just going to sit and hit with him and run stuff down, he's built for it, probably better than any player outside of maybe Novak Djokovic in the sport. Cam Norrie, again, the injury, we don't want to gloss over that, but you have to mix it up. You have to, try different tactics, because this player already at his stage in the game is too good.
Yeah, he's like a tough guy to make miss, right? In addition to all the things he does that he can do it with his aggressive nature, with the forehand down the line, with the diversity, the drop shots. He's got a big serve. He's like one of the few guys really that can handle this surface and hit through it and play serious, like first strike and aggressive tennis. We've seen how many players have trouble to hit winners on these courts. And the players who are tactically sound and can set up points, which Carlitos can do with his clay court background and the tremendous diversity of his skill set, he's a guy that's able to hit through this court and finish points with winners. And that is really an important skill to have in these courts, and not many players have it.
Right. And Chris, I have to ask you, because you follow not just tennis, obviously a big hockey guy, follow sports historically and some of the great rivalries in the history of athletics. Where does this budding rivalry between Daniil Medvedev and the Indian Wells hard courts rank on the sports list?
Oh man, I think it's funny. First and foremost, I think Daniil is just like such a character, and I think he brings so much to the game. I mean, people could take offense to what he says. I mean, if you're the tournament director, Tommy Haas at Indian Wells, you might be saying, what is this guy like dissing our hard courts for, right? But he needs to let off steam during these matches. And really that's kind of what he's doing. And he's been very apologetic for it after in press. He's so funny, saying like, I don't want to distract anybody. I love the tournament. I don't want to be misconstrued. I just don't like the speed of these courts. But I think if it's really bothering him and if he's really struggling with it, I think he needs to think about it a little bit more constructively, about, figure out ways to problem solve and have success on these courts. And you know what? He has. So, I mean, he maybe sounds like he's being a baby about these courts, or maybe you're thinking, wow, this guy's terrible on a slow surface, but he's proven himself to be pretty solid in this tournament. He's played some great tennis despite having a twisted ankle that was problematic, despite jamming his thumb and bleeding on the court and not liking the surface. Here he is in the semis, riding an 18-match winning streak, playing the best tennis he has in years. So it's a very exciting storyline for this tournament and for the ATP season.
18 in a row is impressive no matter how you cut it. And just to kind of add context to this, he does have points that this is a slow court. I think we all agree. Even Hawkeye ran the numbers. I saw Robbie Koenig's tweet where you can run the numbers and see that it is a slower court, 100%. And he is better on faster courts. He prefers it. There's no shame in that. What strikes me, and you mentioned it, he vents, and it's that classic scene from White Man Can't Jump. Like, he is able to play better through it. Like, this isn't a player that sulks and gets upset and then just pouts, tanks, and loses it. He digs back in. So it's almost like he's working his way through these thoughts, these feelings, and he is problem solving. And it's fun to see. It's entertaining in one regard, but he's also backing it up and coming up with impressive wins. Ivashka takes him to 3. Then he beats Zverev, follows that up with the bad ankle, straight sets over Davidovich. Fokina, who's been playing well. The stat that jumps out to me, and just the part of his game that jumps out to me, Chris, is he is amazing when he's break point down. Like, the numbers are outstanding. And maybe it's confidence, maybe it's the fact that he is able to play aggressive and stay locked in. But what are you seeing on these big moments when he's having to save break points that makes Medvedev so special?
Yeah, it's a little bit magical, right? It's just having an answer for a question over and over again. 6 for 6 breakpoint saves, I think, against Davidovich Fokina, who played great tennis. The guy is so entertaining. It was a great watch yesterday. It's a really close 6-3, 7-5 match yesterday. And I think it could have been easily 3 sets. It could have easily been like a barn burner, but you're right. I think we saw that a lot in his last winning streak when he was able to win 20 in a row. And when he's playing his best winning tournaments, he's able to rear back and fire the serve almost like without even thinking about it, just hit his spots. And I think that serve, when he adds that serve into his already world-class game, it makes him so much more lethal. He's able to really dictate on the points and be more aggressive and confident. And it's just like the confidence is just snowballing right now. So Yeah, the surface definitely. By the way, let's go back to it. Really gritty, hard courts. The balls get fluffed almost immediately, and it is really slow for everybody who's playing there. Whether it's a hot, sunny day, which has been better for the players, or one of these night sessions where it's actually below 50 degrees sometimes and super slow conditions. So definitely a little bit different type of tennis that we're seeing at this tournament compared to the others.
Yeah, and if he wins this tournament, I mean, this is as impressive as any of the ones, including the one where he beat Novak Djokovic. And like this, for his game to do this 4 in a row would be nuts. We'll see. 2 matches away. One quick thing on one of the opponents he beat. It is nice to see Alexander Zverev, I think, starting to round into form. He had that traumatic ankle injury physically and mentally, obviously. It weighed a lot on him. He's starting to kind of show some things. It was right there with Medvedev, obviously. Wanted to win that match, was not able to, but it's good to see Zverev starting to regain some of that elite form.
Yeah, I think we knew at the minute he hit the court this year that it was going to take some time. In my opinion, it's been a little quicker than I thought it might be, because that was a serious injury, tearing 3 ligaments in his right ankle, kind of relearning how to move and how to be comfortable moving. And he's a baseliner. He's moving the court quite a bit. Big guy. I mean, great to see him playing better. I think he's going to be a factor on the clay. And yeah, I was expecting him to beat Zverev, but he's still probably not quite where he wants to be. But yeah, look out later in the season.
More with Chris Oddo here on Tennis Channel Inside In as we break down Indian Wells 2023. We're into the final stages of the tournament, and it's a good time to segue into some of the American stuff. And what better place to start than Taylor Fritz? And he continues to roll. He's gone deep into this event several years in a row, won the title last year. And Chris, he's playing like it's his tournament, like he's the gatekeeper for not only this event, but for American men's tennis. You watch Taylor Fritz play, and it's been almost a virtuoso performance. Had a tough match with Ben Shelton in there, was able to beat Fucsovics in straight sets, moves into the quarterfinals where he'll play today against Jannik Sinner. But I see weapons, and I don't really see many weaknesses with Taylor Fritz.
Yeah, he's so confident. He's so reliable right now. It's awesome to see what he's been able to do. Every step that he's hit, he's in his rankings and with the achievements he's been able to grab on tour. He's never taken a step back. He just keeps moving forward. The kid is so driven, and comes off very laid back, very chill. But I think he's one of the most driven guys among the American men. He's the perfect leader for this group of American men that we have, the 10 guys in the top 50, yep. 2 others, Frances, who's still in the draw, which is awesome, and Tommy Paul, who, geez, if he would have converted one of his 6 match points against Felix, he'd still be in the draw. But 3 Americans in the top 20. Taylor's definitely the leader. I think he's aware of it, although I asked him in press the other day, do you take pride in the fact that you are a leader? And I think he was careful about what he would say to his buddies. And, he said, I don't know if I'm the leader. I think that I've shown them what is possible because we're all equals. We all grew up together. We've all been beating on each other since the under 14s. And they saw me win this tournament last year. And then they thought I can do it too. So in that sense, I'm pleased that I can, set the tone for the American men. And he certainly has. And everything you said is true. So reliable. Got such a powerful game. Maybe he's not the ultra sexy game that some other of these players, maybe that Frances has or that Carlos has, but he's making the most of what he has. And he's just such a forceful player, executes his patterns, so smart analytically, tactically, knows how he's going to approach every match against every opponent. I just love what he's doing, man.
Yeah, maybe not the leader, but in the lead right now, I think is how he looks at it. And you bring up a good point that he's got that, I don't want to say chill, but like he's got that attitude, that mindset where maybe he's built the best to handle the pressure of being in that number 1 spot for now and to be able to take that on his shoulders. Because a lot of guys, a lot of great tennis players even might crack under that pressure. But you hit the nail on the head when you talk about tactically, he's smart. He has different game plans. He knows how to attack different opponents, and he's big in big moments. And you can say the same for Frances Tiafoe right now because he continues to roll into his first Masters 1000 semifinal. That win over Cam Norrie was ultra impressive to me because we were just talking about how tough Cam Norrie is, how much of a fighter, how good he is tactically. And Frances was able to essentially in a lot of that match hit him off the court and come up big when he needed to. His serve has really been a crucial part of his game. I don't want to gloss over that. The serve has always had a lot of MPH behind it, but he's coming up big, break point down, game points with the big serves when he needs it. And it's just been special to watch the continued growth of Big Foe.
Yeah. I mean, great performance yesterday. I think that there was a cool moment early in the match where I think it was second game, love 15. Frances had a very slow start. Rain came down, maybe a 15-minute rain delay. Got back on the court, played 1 point, and Frances, I think, lost the point, took a break. Very veteran baller move there.
Yep.
Just walked off the court, sat down, said it's still a little wet, collected himself, came back, and was lights out from that point on. But he was able to rush Cam Norrie, hug the baseline, use his athleticism brilliantly in that match. The backhand cross court to Norrie's forehand seemed to pay a lot of dividends. You saw a lot of errors from Cam Norrie, and I don't think it was because Norrie was having a bad day. I think Frances made him have a bad day. I just love the way he's getting to net, using his athleticism. Yeah, you said the serve is popping, the confidence is there. First Masters 1000 semifinal, long time coming. I think it's going to be, we're going to see it a little more regularly from Frances in the not too distant future.
I read the article you put up on the BNP Paribas website with your interview with him. It was well done. It was revealing to hear what he had to say about the growth, and just with Wayne Ferrara, his coach, staying in the progression one day at a time. And it was so fascinating because you look at the parallels from when he, as we referenced in that piece, the Australian Open breakthrough, makes that quarterfinal, then has to deal with the expectations at a point when he admittedly said he wasn't quite ready for it. Now a little older, the US Open happens. That's why I love this crop of American talent. They all have big moments and they just keep it going. You could even say, obviously, Tommy Paul lost in this tournament, but backs up Aussie Open with a semi or the final in Acapulco and another great performance in Indian Wells. So I like the never settling mentality that these top American men have.
Yeah, I mean, and the guys behind them are going to be coming too. Sebi, when he's healthy, Sebastian Corda, Ben Shelton put in a great performance against Taylor Fritz. That was one heck of a match. I mean, it's easy to see why he's got a bright future. So much going on.
That lefty serve is going to be tough, especially the first time you see it. I feel like it's going to be tough for these guys on tour.
Yeah, and he just storms in behind it and cleans up. I mean, it's virtually impossible to deal with him when you're returning. So yeah, I mean, great. But back to Frances just briefly. It's just so exciting to have him making these steps. I got to say, his press conference yesterday was one of the best press conferences I've ever been in. I mean, he's got this light in his eyes. He's just so funny and charismatic. You just can't get enough of the guy.
Mm-hmm. It's so fun to watch. He's attracting fans too. You're getting people who are outside the tennis bubble that just want to watch his matches. It's great.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention that tough match for Tommy Paul, but on the flip side, Felix showing a lot of guts in that win. 6 match points down, showing some maturity issues. And really, there was the one point where it was a little bit of a missed hit where it dropped in. Luck happens, which it does in this cruel sport of tennis. But I was equally impressed with, I think 5 of those 6 points were Felix just going for it, trusting his serve, trusting his weapons. That win, I think, is going to pay dividends. We'll get to the match with Alcaraz later, but I feel like Felix kind of exercising some of those demons. And remember, he didn't really have success later in tournaments early in his career. I think he's showing some real growth and maturity.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the overlooked young guns at this point. I think people looked at those first 8 ATP finals, which he all lost, and said, maybe this guy doesn't have it, But I mean, he's been coming. 4 titles last year, deep in Grand Slams, now deep in Masters. And if he does turn the corner and flick the switch and not have these issues that he maybe previously had with nerves, everything's there for him to be a top player, to win a slam, to win a tournament like this, to win a match against Carlos Alcaraz, who, by the way, he's 3-0 against. So I do feel that he's actually a little bit overlooked, a little bit overrated for his potential and talent right now. But it doesn't seem to bother him at all, by the way.
Last thing on the men before we switch to the women. Were you at the Holger Rune Stan match?
No, I wasn't in the stadium, but I watched it closely.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I don't want to grandstand on this. I know that after a match, and especially after a loss, emotions are high and mistakes and missteps are made. But I would just say it sounded weird to me that line of do you have anything to say now was what I would expect the winner of a match to say. So that part kind of threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed Holger, I think, one-on-one the night before, and I was so impressed by the things he had to say about his game, about how he's planning for his future. Talked about not letting things like surface affect you, that you need to be your best on any surface, and he compared himself to Novak Djokovic, saying, you know, Djokovic does this, this, and this. He wins all these tournaments on all these surfaces, so why can't I do it? I felt like in that match with Stan, something was wrong with Holger from the start. He had put in a pretty bad performance by his standard, which has been good lately. I almost felt like the issue with Stan in the previous match, where they had the little altercation in Paris, was on his mind. I could be wrong. I mean, obviously he was thinking about it at the end of the match. I mean, he fought well to get into that match and make it a contest, but definitely an uneven performance from Holger, one he'll have to look in the mirror about and want to change. I don't think he played his best. And I think kind of get going at it and scrapping with a legend like Stan Wawrinka is not going to win him any fans. And I think it's really, in the end, a distraction and probably a place he shouldn't be going right now in his career.
Right. Managing his emotions with all that talent is key. Staying in the fight, in the match itself. And then I'm also a big proponent in any sport and anything is just, you probably, if you have an issue, settle that in the locker room away from, you know, the center court and everything there. But still a lot to like about Holger's game. And for Stan, he just keeps fighting, and you know he's going to be willing to scrap with anybody. So it was good to see Stan's performance as well in this tournament.
It was.
Now we go on to the women, and there's only one place to start. It's just with the incredible Iga Swiatek. She's like a well-oiled machine, just keeps on mowing through the tournaments. And you know, as Jason Goodall said in the broadcast against Emma, she just wears you down. I continue to marvel at, I think more than anything, Chris, Iga's floor. Her baseline game is so strong that even when she's not at her very best, it's still at a very elite level. So she, you know, doesn't give you anything and has that ability to elevate her game in the big moments. It's a tough combination to compete against.
She's really dazzled. It's a daunting proposition to face her, especially on this slow surface where players know they're going to have to work. They're going to have to try and set up points and win them against her, and it's virtually impossible. Let's just say Bianca Andreescu played amazing against her. It was probably some of the best tennis I saw in the whole tournament, and still could not win a set.
Yeah, she played well. I thought Emma played well too. And this is, you know, these are, especially Andreescu, she's a disruptor the way she plays, and Iga was patient and didn't let that phase her. I look at what she does here. I mean, she's great on all surfaces, we, you know, all situations, but I felt like there's only a few players, and this is no disrespect to the top, but you're starting to look at the field of who's giving her matches. And you have Sabalenka, obviously, who's killing it too. Rybakina with her game, who just gets perennially overlooked. It's funny that Rybakina just goes deep in every tournament. We're not talking about her as much. And then you have the true disruptor in Barbara Krejcikova, who plays such a different style, has beaten Iga in a couple finals. That's probably the end of my list of players that I think could give Iga a really tough match consistently. I know upsets can't happen, but do you see the field breaking that way with those three kind of separating themselves?
When she's playing this well, I think, yeah, I mean, even the names you mentioned on a surface like the slow surface in Indian Wells, I don't give them as much of a shot as I would elsewhere. Right. It's honestly, it's mind blowing watching her. The movement, the way she's setting up points, the consistency with which she's able to be ultra aggressive, hitting lines like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Hitting ball with such pace, such heavy spin, mentally so composed, so spot on. It's really, I just marvel at it every time I go out and watch her live. It's really impressive. I'm so glad that we have a player like this to kind of rave about, be inspired by. And, you know, she's going to ultimately bring up the level of the tour, because they're going to be tired of getting bageled, getting breadsticked. You said Emma played really well against her, and she did. But in the end, she came into press and just said, I got a taste of what the number one player is like, relentless, you know, moving out of the corners like it's nothing. And I got work to do.
Would you say this court, I guess, is built for her then, with how slow it is? Because I feel like it's a match made in heaven. Her on this surface, especially. Like this could be one of her tournaments, in addition to Roland Garros, obviously, for the duration of her career.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It does feel like she's got this is like a happy place for her. There's no issue with it, and it just makes her that more scary. And like it lets her use also a layer of physicality that I don't think her opponents quite have. She just has everybody on the string running this. You just watch her opponents; they're just running the baseline, and they can do it for 3-4 points and be on defense, but it's over. It's a futile effort.
And how about this? Has not lost to a player younger than her. 18-0 at the WTA, 19-0 at all levels. That's not like a couple matches. That's anybody younger than her coming up is getting dealt with and dealt with properly. So
Yeah,
props to Iga on that. Just
big props.
Gotta also say Aryna Sabalenka playing well. She dismantled Coco yesterday, 6-4, 6-love. Andy Roddick was a special guest on TC Live, and he pretty much called that this would be a one-way traffic match. And for Sabalenka's perspective, the confidence is there. If you want to see an athlete brimming with confidence after finding their groove, it's how she's playing now. And she is harnessing it. She's harnessing her power. She's not going for as much. She's understanding that there are limitations and there's caution that she should use when maybe she shouldn't have or wouldn't have before, rather. But I also love the fact too that, you know, she'll make mistakes and have mishits that would have dragged her down in the past, but it's just on to the next point. So the growth, I think, more between the ears, because we know this world-class powers existed, but Sabalenka is riding the tennis wave right now.
Definitely. I mean, I think she lost 9 points on serve to Coco Gauff, who's a hell of an athlete, hell of a returner, good on slow surfaces. Aren't a lot of free points to be had off the serve on this surface that we'll talk about over and over again, that it's slow. And the serve was her problem last year. And the way she's turned it around and become like a really top-notch server at the moment is just quite impressive. It speaks to her resilience and her ability to look in the mirror and fix her game. And that's another skill that tennis fans can definitely love. If you're a rec player, you're all trying to figure out how to play this, confounding game. And gosh, to see her turn things around in the serve with determination and to become lights out. 16-1 on the year, not bad.
Not bad at all. Not bad. The loss to Krejcikova, she was able to avenge in this tournament. And the depth she gets on her return, too, was just impressive. Coco has a good first serve when it's rolling, and she was getting it deep at Coco's feet, backing her up. On the flip side, you started to see Coco's forehand, unfortunately, break down a little bit under pressure. And, the second serve I noticed, too, and maybe that's probably is a credit to Sabalenka. When that first serve is getting rocked a little bit and you're not sure about the second serve, she was spinning it in a little softer, and that's when Sabalenka was just teeing off on it. So again, Coco gets to a quarterfinal, shows heart. The fight's always going to be there. That Peterson match was just blood and guts, you name it, but still some things she needs to work on at the top of the game. She can get to these rounds with her athleticism, with her natural gifts, but she's finding that last level against the very best to be a tough one to crack.
Yeah, she's definitely got room to improve in to me, it's the forehand, like you'd like to say, like, go spend every hour of your practice sessions just changing that. Hey, look, Sabalenka patched up her serve so well. I don't see any reason why Coco, not just turning 19, can't really turn that forehand from a liability to a strength. I think she has to get where we think she can go with, and you want her to make the most of all this athleticism that she has.
It's got to be tough though, right, Chris? Because she can beat basically everyone, like almost everyone outside the top 10 with what she has now. But to make a big structural change physically and what it would be mentally on you, you kind of probably have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward, and that's the tough part about being an athlete, is working on something that's good, but you want it to be great. It's Tiger Woods changing his golf swing. Like, we don't know if that's a lot of patience you have to show.
Yeah, that might be a couple chapters in the book that gets written about Coco Gauff's career when all said and done.
Yeah, still super young, still super impressive. Sabalenka moves on. She plays last year's finalist coming up next, Maria Sakkari. What a performance by her. She's gone 3 sets every match this tournament and lost the first in 3 of the 4, but is back again into the semifinals. Petra Kvitova was up a set and a break, and Sakkari, showing that Spartan fight yet again, gets through, rolls away in the 3rd set. You just love the fact that, there's so much to love about her game and her approach, but physically she's going to be there in the end. And you just got to get the sense that she's comfortable here too. This isn't a fluke now. She's had some of her best results at Indian Wells in the last 2 years. Yeah.
This time around, 3 of the 4 3-setters have been from a set down. Tough match against Shelby Rogers, who's a giant killer pretty much at every venue. Kalinina was next, and I think in those 2 matches, Sakkari said she wasn't playing well at all. I think that's probably the best part of this run for her, is that she hasn't hit peak tennis by any means. She's really thrilled about the victory yesterday against Petra Kvitova, because she said she felt like an amateur. So she, in the first, and Petra can do that, take the racket out of your hand in the first set and a half, but was still able to problem solve her way out of it. And I think the thing that's probably the most pleasing to Sakkari and to her fans is that she has been able to problem solve. Hasn't been in great form really since last year's run to the final. And this is a little bit of a revival for her. There are good vibes at this place for her. I guess she likes the surface. And yeah, it's nice to see her playing well again and maybe setting the tone for a good spring and summer as well.
Got that break back in the second at 40-love game. So was fighting through the end on that one. And, we'll try to improve that 7-19 semifinal record on the WTA, which isn't great. I think a lot of that is how tough the competition is when you get to this round, but we'll see what Maria can do. That should be a barn burner. A few more things with Chris Oddo before we wrap up here on Tennis Channel Inside In. We got some quarterfinal matches today. As we do this, that we want to talk about, you mentioned Felix and Carlos at the top of that list. 3-0 for Felix against Carlos. These are recent matches. One of those was a retirement, but what can Felix do to have success against a guy that has been such a backbone on this tour, has been riding high? How can Felix keep that unbeaten streak going? Or do you see Carlos just switching the tide in this rivalry?
Good question. I think Felix has got to execute and just be aggressive, when he's playing first strike tennis. I mean, he can hang with anybody. He can dictate against anybody. He's got to just continue to do that, not let the pressure of this match get in his head, and not, just not overthink it, really. And I think he's got a good shot. I think he's an elite level player that I think he's underestimated by lots of us. And I think I was trying to figure out why Carlos hasn't been able to defeat Felix. The only thing I could come up with, one, there was a retirement, totally scratched that from the US Open in 21, where that one doesn't count. But the last two were a little bit late in the season.
Yeah.
After Carlos had won the US Open. And I think
it was Davis Cup in a final, and maybe it was the post of winning the US Open. But Felix played well in those matches, and I think it was a lot of first strike tennis, the serve coming in and knowing that he has to shorten rallies against this guy.
Yeah, that's what he's going to have to do. I think I expect it to be a really pretty competitive match. Probably give the edge to Carlos, given the surface and given that he's in perfect health. But that's one I'm pretty excited to head over there and check out today. That's no doubt about that.
Jannik Sinner, Taylor Fritz is the other one, another great matchup on paper, and probably in person too. Jannik Sinner's been kind of flying under the radar as well. Had that US Open run, match points against Carlos, struggled, had the losses, had some injuries, working with Darren Cahill now. And if he's clicking on all cylinders, and I think for me, it's the serve, it's obviously the health, but so solid on both sides of the court that I think he's going to give Taylor Fritz his toughest match of the tournament. And for me, it's the Fritz first serve if it's rolling, because if it is, he's can serve anyone off the court, it seems. But if it's off and he's throwing in second serves against a guy who has such a great return, I don't know that he pulls this one off. So I think this is a coin flip match as well. Yeah,
it wasn't a coin flip match 2 years ago when Fritz was able to take out Sinner, much younger Sinner, only a year and a half ago, actually, because it was in October of 2021. But it took him out in straight sets. Asked Taylor about that, and he just said, that's a long time ago. For a young player like Jannik Sinner, so much has changed over the last 18 months. He's still rapidly developing. It's going to be a tour de force on tour. It's just a matter of time. Could be his moment in this match against Taylor. It's definitely going to be a close one. And any chance I get to see Jannik play live is one you want to take. He's such a gifted athlete, and he's kind of still really much stepping into his game, right? I love the aggression. I love the fact that he's working on getting up to net and playing a little bit of ultra aggressive tennis, and he's just so gifted.
Sinner, it sounds a little different when he hits the ball too. You love that, but with Fritz rolling, it's hard to beat him at his home tournament. It's like going to the road and trying to win a road game. Pretty tough there. Women's matches have some Cinderella stories, playing some established players. Sonia Kristeva takes on Iga. Carolina Mukova with some dazzling tennis, gets Rybakina. And I mentioned it before, Rybakina she's always been here. This is like a year now we're going on of, wow, this, eventually it's not going to be surprising, right, that she's into a quarterfinal and a semifinal of a tournament.
Yeah, probably one of the players that can really hit through this court and be aggressive. You just look back at since Wimbledon, winning the Wimbledon title, Australian Open finals, playing incredible. Likely the player that is going to be facing Iga in the semifinals, you have to think. But Mukova is a great story. We haven't seen much from her. This is actually her debut. at Indian Wells. She's like 26 years old. I'm not sure where she's been, but that's remarkable. Kirstea, another interesting story, now coached by Thomas Johansson. And 32 years old, former world number 21, reeling off some big wins, beat Caroline Garcia. Going to run into the buzzsaw known as Iga today, but it'll be interesting to see what she can come up with.
Women's semifinal could be Sakkari, Sabalenka, Iga, Rybakina. That's as good as it gets. I mean, that really is just what you could expect for. So excited to see how this shakes out. Chris Oddo, this has been a blast. You can find him on the Lucky Let Court and on Tennis Now. And also just want to point out, first time in Islanders history, they swept the Penguins. So got that sweep for the first time ever.
God, they're just barely hanging on by a thread for the right to face the Boston Bruins in the first round. Thanks for mentioning that. They won last night, so I'm happy.
Hey, and I wanted to do the hockey tie-in too, because there's been some chatter, deservedly so, about Alcaraz and him being one of the premier athletes in the world in any sport. And yeah, I think it's like him, Connor McDavid are on a short list of guys I would say are, given my love to hockey and tennis, those would be maybe two guys I would say are the best athletes in the world.
Yeah, I think Carlos is, and he's still very much developing, and we have a long future with Carlos Alcaraz and his many rivals. I think Jannik Sinner is going to be one of them. You guys who are Federer fans, Nadal fans, and thinking about, well, I'm not that motivated to stay involved and watch tennis, just go check these kids out. You'll be hooked for another couple decades.
We're going to get Novak on the clay, Nadal hopefully coming back too. So he'll get the old guard, he'll get the young guard. There'll be some good matches down the pike, and it starts today as we get ready to finish up Indian Wells. Chris Oddo, always a blast. You're always welcome on this show. Always fun to learn some stuff from you and talk tennis.
Thanks, Mitch. I enjoy it.